Hello, backyard vegetable gardeners. Hope you're having a great day. Welcome to the Backyard Vegetable Gardening channel, where everyone can learn to grow more of their own food and experience the joy of living and sharing the gardener's lifestyle. Today is Saturday, April the 5th, 2025, and in today's video, we're going to talk about how I grow potatoes in the backyard vegetable garden. If you're thinking about growing potatoes in your backyard garden, I really don't blame you. In my mind, it's just a no-brainer. For every 1 pound of potatoes we plant in the ground, we can reasonably expect as much as 4 to 10 pounds in return, depending on the variety and depending on the conditions. But not all potatoes are the same. When you're thinking about growing potatoes, we typically think about 3 different crops. You've got your main season crop, you've got your early season crop, and then you got what's called new potatoes. We only grow main season crops here, which is a long season crop. Our Kennebecks, our Pontiac Reds, our Yukon Golds, they typically mature within about 100 days. If you look it up on the internet, they're going to tell you those types of potatoes generally mature within 80 to 120 days. We normally get ours planted in the ground. Once we see them sprout, we start counting back about 100 days. Depending on how the tops look, if the leaves start yellowing, the tops start falling over, that's when we really know when to harvest them. Same thing goes with your early season crops, which are a shorter season. Those typically mature within 60 to 80 days. Now, we don't grow many of them around here because we got a real long growing season and I don't have a lot of room to grow all kinds of potatoes. And then you got your new potatoes, which are really any kind of potato. You just harvest them early, within 45 to 60 days after they've sprouted, just little bitty sweet and tender potatoes. Where I live in North Carolina, zone 7B, my last average frost date is about April the 27th. My average first frost date is somewhere around October 17th. So I have a very long growing season here in North Carolina. I have 172 days. Depending on where you live, you might not want to grow one of these long season crops. You might want to do early potatoes that's got that 60 to 80 day maturity time. But where I live, we can plant about any kind of potato, any kind of sweet potato, and get by with it. And typically, the only varieties we ever plant in my garden are Kennebecks, those red Pontiacs, and Yukon Golds. Now, this year we didn't do any Yukon Golds. We extended a couple rows, so we've got 3 30-foot rows of Kennebec and 3 30-foot rows of those red Pontiac, and that's really all the room I've got to grow in my garden. When it comes to planting your potatoes, you really want to get them in the ground 2 to 4 weeks before your last average frost date. My preference is 4 weeks before your average last frost date, and we've got ours in about a week and a half ago. And the reason it's so important that you want to try to get your potatoes in the ground just as soon as you can is because as soon as the temperature gets about 85 or 90 degrees and stays there, your potato plants are going to suffer. They're not going to do any well. They're really not going to develop any more tubers. What you got's what you got, and then your plant's just going to die. Well, last year we had a bad experience with our potatoes, and I really can't complain. For $12 or $15 worth of seed potatoes, we still got about 150 to 200 pounds, which is still a great return on our investment for no more work we had in it, no more money we put in it. It was still pretty good, but that was still half of what we should have got. The problem was it rained so very much during that period of time where we should have planted them. So we was about a month late planting them. And then summer got here really, really quick. So our growing season for them potatoes was shrunk to about 75 days. So we didn't really get as good a harvest as we should. So depending on where you live and how long your growing season is, you really do need to try to get those potatoes in as soon as you can. In most of the United States, you can still plant your potatoes right now. I do believe I'm correct in saying that. No matter where you're at. Now, if you're way up north, you probably still have a few more weeks, maybe even a month, depending on how far north you are, before you get near that average last frost date. But where I live in North Carolina, like I said, our average last frost date is April 27th. So we try to get ours planted the first week of April or maybe the last week of May, just depending on how that falls. And we know we've got plenty of time. And what that experience the other year taught us was just how important it is for the soil to be well draining where you plant your potatoes. Potatoes really prefer a sandy loam type soil with a pH between 6 and 6.5, so slightly acidic. But where I live in North Carolina, we got a lot of heavy clay, and it's took me several years to amend that soil, and it's still not where I want it to be, but it's getting better with time. So what I recommend that you do, if you've got a heavy type soil, dig your planting hole just a little bit bigger than you should, and then fill it with some compost, or maybe mix the compost with some peat moss. Put your potato on top of that, and then finish filling your hole up with that peat moss and compost mixture, and you should be good to go. Now, as far as the pH goes, where I live, we got pretty alkaline soil. It's not it's not real alkaline, but it's certainly not neutral. So what we do is we just get us a 20-ounce red Solo cup and fill it with either soil acidifier like the Espoma brand, or we'll get some garden sulfur, and we'll just sprinkle it down one side of the road, fill the cup up again, sprinkle it again, just mix it in, and that's all we do, and we've always had pretty good success with that. So if your soil is not within that 6 to 6.5 pH range, you need to do something either to make it more alkaline or you need to make it more acidic, because if it's not somewhere close within that range, those potato plants aren't going to have access to all the nutrients that they need, and you're not going to get big tubers. And that's the whole purpose of growing your potatoes, unless you're growing them little fingerlings or something like that. But you want some big potatoes, so make sure your soil is well draining and the pH is somewhere in that 6 to 6.5 range. Well, folks, we had to move inside. Sorry about that. It just got too hot for the camera. It kept overheating, and plus the road noise was getting pretty bad, so it's probably a good decision to move in here. Before we start talking about actually planting our taters, we need to talk about what we're planting, and that's our seed potatoes. You can see right beside me, I got two 50-pound sacks of seed potatoes. And you don't necessarily have to do that. You can buy them individually, you can buy them by the pound, you can buy them in a 5-pound bag, or you can buy them like this. For us, we like to buy everything as local as we can. Our local supplier always sells them by the pound, which is individual, or in these 50-pound bags. And what we normally do is we split it with some friends. It works out cheaper. It's 86 cents a pound if you buy them individually, or it's like 49 or maybe 56 cents a pound if we buy them in these big bags. So we buy the big bags, plant what we need, and let our neighbors buy the rest from us, and it just works out really good. One of the things that you need to know first and foremost about your seed potatoes is you want them to be certified disease-free. Now, you can go to the grocery store and you can buy a bag of potatoes and you can hope that they'll grow. A friend of mine found out last year why I don't do that. He planted about 5 pounds of potatoes that he bought from the local grocery store, and they rotted in the ground. And the reason for that is they were sprayed with a sprout inhibiting agent. You see both of these potatoes, they're sprouted, and if I could zoom in on this bag, more sprouts coming out of the bag. These seed potatoes were not sprayed with anything that would inhibit them from growing into a mature potato plant. So they're not only certified disease-free, I also know they haven't been treated with that chemical. So if you are going to buy your seed potatoes from the grocery store, at least try to get some certified organic. In this day and age, that really don't mean a whole lot depending on where you're at. Natural, organic, all them things, they've been marketed. They don't even mean what they should mean, but that will be your best option. Now, when it comes to your seed potatoes, we'll go back to talking about these sprouts. On the internet, it's real popular. People talk about chitting. I think it just gives them something to talk about. Real quick, fast, and in a hurry, we do pre-sprout our seed potatoes. And if you look at our channel from last year this time, we did a video about how to chit your potatoes. And we fell into that trap, just doing something because we were a new channel trying to make videos. And it was fairly successful. We are certainly glad we helped some people. But this year, I'm just going to tell you, raw dog, just as quick as I can, how to do it the right way. We buy these 50-pound sacks. We done said we split them. I'm going to tell you why we really like these 50-pound sacks. I get them about a month before I'm supposed to plant. I put them in a cool, dark room, and by the time it's time for me to plant, they've done sprouted. Now, honestly, this one, that's about what I expect. These red Pontiacs, they've been growing for a while. Still perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with those taters. But when it comes to pre-sprouting your potatoes, I know this is more than likely going to give me a potato plant. If you get a potato and you don't chit them and you just put them in the ground, I'm not saying they won't. We've never done that, and all the times we've grew potatoes, just for the simple fact it's so easy to pre-sprout them. Let's just say for a minute you buy yours from, you buy them by the pound individual. Get you some of those thick paper bags from the grocery store, double them up. Put your seed potatoes in there, close them up, put them in a cool, dark room, leave them there for about 3 weeks. They'll probably start sprouting for you. With the seed potatoes, went through the aging process long enough. These guys are ready. Plants are made to reproduce. That's what they want to do, and these guys are going to do us good. So you want you some certified disease-free potatoes if possible. If not, you want to try to get you some certified organic potatoes from somewhere you know that those words mean more than just marketing hype. And if you do want to pre-sprout your potatoes, you need to give them about 3, maybe 4 weeks in a cool, dark place, and you should be good to go. Okay, there's one more thing we got to talk about concerning our seed potatoes before we get into actually planting them. And what that is cutting your potatoes. Now, we've already talked about sprouting them and eyes and all that stuff, but if you'll look at both of these potatoes, they're pretty small. Now, normally our seed potatoes are a lot bigger than that. These red Pontiacs, they're always small potatoes. These Kennebecks are normally much larger. Typically, we'd be able to take these Kennebecks and cut them at least in half or maybe quarter them. This year, there was not enough eyes to do that. Now, I'm not worried about that. We planted all of our Kennebecks just like you see this. But these little bitty Pontiac Reds, they've sprouted all over the place. And there's 1 eye, 2 eyes, 3 eyes, 4 eyes. I could actually cut this little spud up in half. I could plant it and I could grow 2 potato plants. I'm not going to do that because they are so small and we've got plenty of potatoes. I'm not going to do that this year. But if you are going to cut your potatoes, and I would strongly encourage you to do so if you can, it'll save you a lot of money, but you want to let them air out for at least a day, 2, maybe even 3 days. And the reason for that, you want them to have a little scab on them. You don't want that fleshy part to be all wet and gooey when you put them in the ground, because what's going to happen, it's going to encourage it to rot and you won't get a plant. But if you lay them on a tray somewhere with good airflow in the dark, give them about 2-3 days, they'll scab over, you can put them in the ground, you won't have to worry about that. Well, now that we've got all our bases covered with that general information, now we can start talking about growing our potatoes. First thing we're going to do is we're going to stake out our first row. My garden's fully fenced in, so my first row is going to be staked 48 inches off of that fence, and each additional row is going to be spaced 42 inches. Your potatoes need to be planted 8 inches deep, and you want to plant them with the eyes up, and you want to space your plants anywhere from 12 to 18 inches apart. Now, the reason you want these eyes to be up is because it's less work on the plant having to go up this way instead of having to go up and around and out. Spacing 12 to 18 inches. If you want to plant more potatoes, use the 12-inch method. That's what we do. Some people want to grow big potatoes, so they're going to space theirs out 18 inches, and that's going to depend on the variety, and it's going to depend on the growing conditions. Some potatoes can be planted as close together as 8 inches, but we always use the general rule, just space them 12 inches apart, and that seems to do us good. Piece of advice I'll give you, and I learned it last year, you want to keep you some spare seed potatoes. Even if you never wind up planting them, if you throw them in the compost, throw them in the trash, whatever. Now, some of these you can eat. These right here, I don't know if I'd eat. They're a little soft, but I reckon you still could if you wanted to. But the reason I'd recommend keeping them is if you don't have some that sprout, you can always fill in those empty spots with your spares. The one thing you're going to learn if you've never grew potatoes is that you're going to need some patience. It's going to take 14 to 20 days before you start seeing these little plants emerge from the ground. So what I normally do is I wait about a month after I planted them. And if I've got any bare spots, that's when I'm going to take these spare seed potatoes and I'm going to fill in those gaps. And no, they might not develop as large as these other plants, but they're only going to be a few weeks behind, and I've filled in a hole. So if you want to hedge your bets, go ahead and save you some of them seed taters and fill in those empty spots. Now, probably 2 of the most asked questions related to anything related to gardening is how often do I water and how often do I fertilize? Well, when it comes to watering, I really can't tell you. I can tell you I water mine once or twice a week, depending on how hot it is, and that's because we've got that clay soil. If I watered it every day, it would flood. It'd be a muddy mess, the weeds would take over, and my plants would die. Depending on where you live, what type of soil you got, how hot it gets, that's going to determine how much you water, but at least water them once a week. If you get some rain, want to measure your rainfall. You know, the plants, we typically recommend an inch a week, but when it comes to growing these big tubers, they're going to need some water. You just want to be careful not to overwater them. Fertilizing is a little simpler. We talked about hilling. Your plants are going to grow anywhere between 6 and 12 inches a week, depending on the variety, depending on the conditions. I like to hill mine when they're 12 inches tall. I leave just a few inches of leaves sticking out of the ground. That way the plant can still photosynthesize. But while I'm hilling my plants, that's when I'll side dress them with some 10-10-10 or some 20-20-20. Typically, I'll get me a 16 or 20 ounce solo cup and I'll fill it full of fertilizer. And I'll go down one side of each row and then I'll go down the other side. You only need about 2 tablespoons of plant, so you do the math. We've got 30-foot rows. It typically takes 4 cups for us to go up and down the rows. Just make sure you don't get it too close to the stems of your plant or you will burn your plant. Once you side dress it, that's when you do your hilling. Just again, make sure your fertilizer don't touch the plant, water it in, you're pretty good to go. I think hilling is probably one of the biggest reasons people don't grow potatoes in their backyard garden, but don't let hilling scare you off. We only hill our plants about 3 or 4 times through the whole season, so it's not really a big deal. Typically only 3 times, but depending on how good the plants grow, we have had to hill them a 4th time, but it's really no big deal. Now let's talk about everybody's favorite part of growing taters, and that's harvesting taters. Now I'll be honest, I said that with a little sarcasm. If there's one thing I absolutely hate, it's digging taters. I don't have a tater plow. We do it all by hand, and well, it's not that fun. Thank God I got a 16-year-old boy who helps, and he helps pretty good. But at the end of the day, digging taters is still digging taters. Now, how do you know when it's time to dig those taters? Well, that's a good question. You got these Kennebec and Pontiac be our examples. I done told you I'm looking for 100, 110 days till maturity. So once they start sprouting, I'm going to start counting. But what I'm really looking for is for those leaves to start turning yellow and those stems to start dying back. That's when I know it's time to harvest my potatoes. But there's one thing that might be a little tricky. Sometimes those plants still look really good even though it's time to get them out of the ground. It just depends on how the weather was that year. So it's real important that you know the days to maturity. I know sometime about mid-June or early July, that's when I'm going to harvest my potatoes, and I'm not going to let them go any longer than that, or they might just rot in the ground or maybe get sick or something like that, and we really don't want that to happen to our taters. So know the number of days to maturity for your plant. Look for those leaves to turn yellow and the stems start dying back, and that's how you know. Now, when it comes to actually harvesting the potatoes, unless you have a potato plow, you're probably going to use the same method I do. Now, I don't recommend that you use a shovel. If that's all you got, fine, use a shovel. Get you a good garden fork. You can get them at Tractor Supply, anywhere like that. They're not necessarily the cheapest things. They're about 50 bucks a piece. So you want to take care of it, but they do the best job that we found. And what we do is we go out there when it's a good dry day. You don't want to do it when it's wet because your potatoes have to be laid out for a little while, and you need to get the dirt off of them. What we normally do is we go about 18 inches away from the plant, and we work the soil pretty good, and we just pull it up, get our taters, lay them beside the road, leave them there for a day, come back, get them the next day, knock the big dirt off of them, take them somewhere where it's cool and dark with a lot of good airflow, and we leave them there for about 3 weeks, and then the potatoes are ready for long-term storage. Now, when it comes to storing your potatoes, this seed supplier says to store your potatoes at 40 degrees. Well, I don't have a place that's 40 degrees, and I'm sure you don't either. So just make sure that it's a cool, dark place and with plenty of airflow, and your taters will last just as long as they're supposed to last. And that really is all there is to know about growing potatoes in your backyard vegetable garden. Guys, I know there were some things we didn't talk about, like mainly pest and disease issues, but just to be completely honest, I've really not had any significant issues in the 5, 6, 7 years we've been growing our potatoes. One year we had a problem with June bugs. They did a little damage, but it was nothing to write home about. And I know some of you guys might be interested in growing in 5-gallon buckets or some kind of container or straw bale, but guys, we grow too many potatoes for me to even try that, and I don't have time to do little experiments, so I didn't want to put nothing like that in the video because I've got absolutely no experience doing it. But I am curious, if you're growing potatoes in your garden this year, or you plan on growing potatoes in your garden this year, I'd sure love to know what varieties you're growing and why you chose to grow them. And don't forget to like this video, guys. If you found it enjoyable, if you learned something, it helps us out by hitting that thumbs up button. And if you like gardening and garden related content, it sure would be a blessing if you'd subscribe to the channel. If you want to be notified when we release new content, go ahead and hit that notification bell. If you're interested in learning more about growing potatoes, I'll link some videos up here and here. You can watch them later. Guys, it's been my pleasure. Thank you for watching. Hope you're having a great day.